Hey everyone, my name's Gunther and welcome back to Ottawa Zoo. With the launch of our latest DLC, I felt it was time to add in some new animals. We've been in a rebuild phase for so long that I kind of forgot what it was like to build a new habitat for a new animal. So that being said, let's start building a new home for the Wolverine. Now just a reminder as well, if you like the content, feel free to like or comment. It definitely helps me out and I appreciate all the feedback that everyone provides. Now, in the Arctic Wolf video, I had asked for some ideas on what to place on the flat open area above their habitat, and I got a few suggestions, both here on YouTube and in our Discord. One of the recommendations was to build a habitat for the Wolverine, as it was quite small and it would kind of fit in the area really well. So I loved that idea so much that I decided to take a shot at it, and boy was I not disappointed. Now, part of playing Planet Zoo that I have a lot of fun with is how it pushes me to build bigger and better than before. I constantly need to improve and build something new, and this episode has a few firsts for me. It's not often that I build and work with multiple elevations. In this case, we've pushed this exhibit right to the top of the mountain, and honestly, it kind of caps this entire area off really well. Now, of course, no habitat is built perfectly the first time, and that rings true for the guest barrier you saw pop up. The first barrier was pretty good in my opinion, and I went with these two different styles. On our guest-facing side, I had a lot of glass to allow others to view in, and on the non-guest-facing side, we just went with a straight wood fence. The issue is the height though. I wasn't too happy with the initial height of the barrier, so I circled back and I added on a second portion, made mostly of net. This helps to provide a bit more protection for our guests, while also keeping with the wood theme that I've started in the zoo. Now, I did cut a few things from this video, and I want to apologize in advance if you wanted to see more focus on a certain part. The guest barrier is a perfect example. I would love to know what you all prefer to see in a speed build and what matters to you most. So let me know by leaving a comment. Share what your favorite part of the speed build was and what you would have liked to have seen more of. And if you ever want to see something more in depth that just didn't make it into a speed build, feel free to pop over to the Discord community. I'm always open to doing some live streams to show certain things in more detail. I mentioned earlier that there were a few firsts for me in this episode, and here's another one for me. I've never really built a climbing area before, which is pretty shocking, I know. The most I've ever done was for the very first grizzly habitat that I'd built in Ottawa Zoo, and holy, it's wild to see how things have progressed with this new climbing structure. Honestly, I didn't really have an idea on how I wanted to start this area, so I turned to the workshop for some inspiration. And funny enough, I really don't think we give credit to how much the workshop can help with just inspiring you to build new things. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. A cool way to learn new techniques is to take apart a workshop blueprint. Sometimes you'll find some pretty cool ideas, or maybe a unique way to use an item that you may never have thought of before. Now, for me, I always like to try to build something myself before I use a workshop item. But there's always going to be exceptions to every rule, and Lion's Sign Pack is a great example of this. I'll always try my best, though, to leave a link to each workshop item in the description below. So if you see something that you really liked, please head over to that builder Steam page and hit that like button. It really helps them know they've built something super amazing. So, having taken some inspiration from the workshop, I started work on the climbing area for the Wolverine. I used the African scaffold tower as the base for each stand. The ropes and the way the wood support really works well in adding some smaller details that I just know I wouldn't have been able to create myself. It is a shame though that you can't color it differently. I tried to provide a few different ways for our Wolverines to access and travel amongst the raised platforms. I added in tons of different ropes and towers to allow them to climb up and down on their own. Now, from previous experience, I moved over to the sandbox mode just to make sure that the Wolverines were able to use the majority of the space correctly. We've all been there in the past where you build something you just really loved and you find out that it wouldn't work. So lesson definitely learned today. The last piece of this climbing tower was to create some shelter for the Wolverines to rest during the day and take naps on their own. It's not perfect, but through some trial and error, I ended up with a finished product that wasn't really too bad looking. Really, I just made it with some conservation wood pieces and a thatch roof. Now, I also went back in and added some enrichment items on some of the other platforms after the fact. Really, the goal is just to pull some Wolverines up and get them to climb around a bit on their own. Now, things always look pretty rough without some foliage, so falling back onto our normal foliage process for the zoo, which I realize may not transfer very well to other biomes, I added in some rocks, grass, bushes, and trees. And with this final step, most of the interior of our new habitat is complete. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the Wolverine and some interesting facts about them. Wolverines are considered to be the largest member of the mustelid family. These include weasels, badgers, and otters. And they're typically found in northern regions of the globe, including areas like Siberia, Scandinavia, and North America. They typically prefer more rugged areas, feeling most at home in boreal forests and the tundra. Speaking of the tundra, wolverines have adapted significantly to survive in the cold climates that they typically call home. They have a dense-like fur that acts as an insulator for cold climates, and their snowshoe-like feet help them to travel over deep snow, giving them a leg up in these types of environments. The wolverine, despite being part of the weasel family, generally resemble bears with their small, squat, broad bodies, with males able to reach upwards of 66 pounds. They're also generally regarded as solitary nocturnal hunters, preying on all types of animals, and these include voles, porcupines, squirrels, moose, and deer. And of course, they're also excellent scavengers, which is where the majority of their diet comes from, scavenging elk, caribou, and other large animals. Wolverines are considered a species of least concern, but they are sparse in Europe and eastern and southwestern North America as a result of hunting, trapping, and efforts designed to keep them away from livestock. Wolverines actually appear to be more dependent on areas with deep snow. Scientists who have studied them have observed significant population declines in regions seeing a sudden reduction in snowpack levels. It's actually believed that the harsher winters with more snowfall actually provide a more food resources for the wolverine. Deer, elk, and other ungulates are more plentiful, and rodents, such as the vole, can be found tunneling more underneath deep snow as opposed to snow-free conditions. Now, our habitat for the wolverine has finally come together, and normally this would be the end of the speed build. We really just need to close everything off with some more foliage work, blending our switchback trail into the terrain and giving it all a more natural look. But this actually isn't the end. Originally, I had intended to create a boardwalk overlooking the Arctic wolf habitat and giving our guests this beautiful vantage point to kind of see the zoo and take in some amazing photos. This actually would have been another first for me. Sadly, once I put something together, it just really didn't sit very well with me. It looked a little out of place, and I thought perhaps it was just kind of not going to work out for me. Now, if you're part of the Discord, you can actually see what this really rough-looking boardwalk looked like. But I kind of had a new thought. When I was working with the foliage for the path, I found this rather interesting open area. I had no plans for it because it was kind of small and didn't really think there was an exhibit or anything I could sneak in there. But I realized that this would actually be a perfect area for a new lookout. Something a little bit more natural that's kind of worked into the existing terrain. And on top of that, we can also add in a little rest area. It's quite the hike to make it all the way up here, and I'm worried that people are not going to want to visit the Wolverine Habitat. So the best way to kind of finish this is to place down a gulpy and a chief beef. This will actually drive more customers up here and satisfy some of the needs that our guests have for the zoo. So with some quick work, adding in a building and giving it a bit of a more unique shape to avoid some empty areas, our new lookout was pretty much complete. But really, you can't have a lookout without some binoculars. So turning to the workshop and grabbing a new binocular blueprint, I was pretty much set. Now remember, you are going to be able to find the link to this blueprint in the description below. And if you end up using them for your own zoos, just please make sure to like the workshop item. Now, for a build that was more of a dream, I'm really impressed with how this has capped off the entire Arctic Point area. Now we're finally coming to the end of the speed build portion. And honestly, I'm really liking these less than 10-minute builds. I hope this has helped to give you some inspiration for your own Wolverine builds. And I think the best way for us to end this video is to take a tour of our new habitat and take a look at Ottawa Zoo from our new viewpoint. Now, I gotta say, for a live tour, the best place to start really is from this vantage point. And I love the way it looks. We can see Beaver Creek, we can see our bison habitat, we can see Wolf Firewatch, and we can see something in the works, which I'm not overly sure what we're gonna put here yet. Would love your feedback on what you guys think we should put here. I'm thinking a Eurasian animal, so make sure to let me know what you would love to see enter here. I'm using an idea from ZSH Plays, how he kind of maps out the size of the habitat in advance. We all know I struggle with creating things too big or too small, and this really helps, and we actually use it for the Wolverine Habitat. But we're not here to talk about the rest of the zoo. We're here to talk about our new Wolverine Habitat, and what better place to start than the rest area for our guests. And there's a reason for that. In my hometown, in my home province of Canada, we have the Toronto Zoo, and the Toronto Zoo has this fantastic North American section, and it's at the bottom of this like really large hill. You have to climb down. Going down's not the hard part. It's coming back up, which is a struggle. So I like to think that we would put a rest center here for some like food and drinks and stuff like that for our guests to stop by and take a little bit of a breather while they kind of continue their journey all the way up. And there's a few things that I've seen that have kind of changed since our speed build. One, we have lights and bins everywhere because our guests do tend to leave a lot of garbage. And I've added in a lot more trees. And the reason why is it's in an effort to hide the sight lines associated with like the hill and the edge of the map, because we just like, it just drops suddenly from this like really cool forest area to like kind of just emptiness. So went back in and added a bunch of trees on the border just to kind of hide that in. And I gotta say, the new sight lines look fantastic. We have our little wild warrior entrance sign. And then we kind of have our exhibit itself. And I love the way this exhibit looks. We have some additional foliage, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few seconds, but we have 2 vantage points. We have our ground floor vantage point, which is where we are right now. Guests, especially kids, can kind of come in and take a look and see how it looks and take an eye and see if maybe we can spot some wolverines, which they tend to jump all over the place, which I'm pretty shocked that they kind of that's how they traverse the platforms that we have going on there. But you know what, it works. You see a lot of nettle at the edge here. This actually came from a tip from the Discord. So shout out to that Aussie bloke and Sparrow for providing some ideas on just how to kind of hide this little edge, which doesn't look half bad. I went back in and added some buffalo grass as well, just to kind of blend everything in. And then we have lots of education signs from Lions Pack. Love that education sign. And I think a lot of people agree with me when they say that this is something that's super beneficial to have in their zoos. Just adds so much additional, little realism to the entire build. But let's kind of continue our journey. We have two sections here we really want to visit, which is going to be our staff section, which weirdly enough, we have to kind of go backwards to get into, and I'll explain why. And then we have our elevated area. So as we kind of walk around, we have a little door for our staff to come through, and then we have a little sign with an arrow pointing us to go further. And the idea behind it is letting us know that, like, hey, there's a second vantage point. See the wolverines from the treetops kind of idea. So you kind of continue on your journey. And then, not that you can hear it, I think the audio is kind of I usually dim the audio a little bit when I do these tours, but our waterfall is right there, and it's hidden by this little rock feature. And the way I like to think about it is there's like a little pool of water on the other side. I tried to make one, it just really didn't work out. So if you have any tips on creating like small water features, I would love to hear them, because that's definitely how we improve. Now, as we kind of continue up, we have the rest of our habitat and some signs. So I like to think that it's kind of like signs on their habitat, signs on their diet, signs on like reproduction and conservation and stuff like that. And we get this amazing view. And again, a leaping wolverine, which is really just the best way to cap any movie or any video off anyway, is seeing some wolverines leap around. But you can kind of see we've added in some additional foliage and rocks, and really the reason why is because when I was taking a look and working on the foliage and like the trees in the background to kind of hide all the sight lines, I found that this was like a little bare. So what I did is I just kind of went through, added in some rocks, sunk them in a little bit, and then added some additional buffalo grass all over the place. And the idea behind it is it fills up all this empty space that we had kind of going on in the habitat itself. Unfortunately, for some reason, depending on how many rocks you have, your staff don't like to walk over them. So you have to be careful about where you place your rocks, because they can become a barrier for your staff, which can be quite frustrating. But you know what? It's getting there. It's working. So it always pays to kind of go back and take another look. And huge shout out to Sparrow for the tip to always keep your sightlines in mind. It's a small thing, but it definitely makes all the difference. And really, it's proven here, because this is not the first time I've recorded this tour. I've actually recorded it a few times, because every time I go to record it, I notice something that needs to change or improve. And that's what I do. I come back and fix it, and then I'll record it again and find something else. So it's always worth it for you to take a little walk around your park. Now we have another staff door with some additional signs, and really the signs are to take away from the staff door, because if we were to walk through here, it's going to be some power and water filtration, because we definitely need power and water filtration for this area. We had nothing servicing the Arctic wolf habitat. It's speaking of the Arctic wolf habitat, you actually get an amazing view from up here as well. Not that we're gonna jump over the fence, but you can kind of see down a little bit. You can kind of get a gorgeous view as you walk all the way up to the top of this mountain, and you can kind of look back and see the hike that you've taken. So this is a gorgeous, gorgeous view. Now, as we kind of continue, normally, in order to go through here, we would just go through the door. Because the two paths are on top of each other, it doesn't really work. So we're just gonna phase through our barrier wall, and we're gonna walk in through the back door here. Now, again, it's nothing too fancy, but we've added a few things. We have some storage, some additional storage, and more foliage tables, so we can kind of go and clean up and prepare for the habitat itself, our keeper hut, and then a little unit for everybody to store their stuff as they're walking through. Of course, we lifted this from our Arctic fox or Arctic wolf habitat, my apologies, which just kind of shows us where you can wash your hands and keep clean, because there's definitely going to be a lot of stuff happening and you will want to stay clean. Now, this is why we don't walk through that door, because you can't walk all the way down. I think that's a glitch to do with having a path on top of another path. We've definitely run into that before. Super frustrating, but it's okay. We'll just, like I said, phase through all those walls to get through. But that's it for this episode. It's a really quick tour, but I love this habitat. It looks better every time I kind of go back. It's all these small details that you add on after the fact, and I think it's so worth it for you to take a step back, do a little tour, and then go in and adjust it. I can't get over this view. I really can't. Like this shot looks amazing. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for all the creators in our Discord for your tips and tricks, and just watching your videos has helped me to become a better builder, and I really appreciate that. And then thank you to everybody else, all the viewers, all the people providing suggestions and commenting on the posts. It really helps me out as well. Lets me know that I'm doing a good job or that you like the content. And speaking of, if you like the content, if you're up to it, feel free to subscribe. If not, that's okay. There's no pressure to do so. All I ask is that maybe you leave a like as well. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you. And of course, ciao for now, everybody.